So, of course, I will be making some forward-looking statements, so please take the appropriate caution when listening to what I have to say here. As Eric said, this is a relatively new story. We listed in June of 2021, and we've been working behind the scenes for about 2.5 years before that, assembling a large portfolio of projects. What I'll try to get across today here is that Headwater, with a currently $11 million market cap, I think is an interesting opportunity to get exposure to a large portfolio of projects, a quality team that's operating in a good jurisdiction, and importantly, we have this exploration philosophy that Eric sort of alluded to that's already starting to bear fruit with a couple of discovery holes on 2 of the 4 projects we've drilled so far. So as it sits right now, we have 50 million shares outstanding, 41% insider control, no warrants, pretty clean share structure, large portfolio of 10 projects, all of which are 100% owned, and most of which are totally royalty-free, giving us quite a bit of optionality within the portfolio at large here. I'll step back now just to look at the last 12 months or so for Headwater. About a year ago, we raised $4 million in a financing in February, went through the whole technical report prospectus process, listed the company in June on the CSE and shortly thereafter on the OTC. Concurrent with all that, we finalized the assembly of the portfolio, negotiated a couple of key deals on 100% owned Nevada assets, staked a couple of more projects, and then right after listing began drilling. Marched through 4 projects, as Eric said, and had 2 pretty interesting successes. At our Katey project, we just announced this a few weeks ago. In our first hole, underneath a relatively low-grade near-surface epithermal system, we accurately predicted where the apparent feeder zone is and hit 1.95 meters of 23.6 grams in the first hole on the project since 1989. And the only hole to drill to the appropriate depths in our view. Before that, we drilled another set of interesting holes actually at our Spring Peak project in Nevada. The best hole was 38 meters of a gram underneath a blind sinter, and 4 of the 5 holes in that program actually hit some pretty darn interesting geology and gold as well. So we think we're off to a good start pursuing this specific model here. We're targeting high-grade epithermal veins. There's a lot of reasons why we're focused on the high-grade portions of the system. That's where the highest margins are, the best value, and another not insignificant thing is permitting underground quartz vein mines in a place like the U.S. These sorts of deposits are probably the easiest things to get into production from a permitting standpoint. So the opportunity that we see is, even though there's a long history of mining and exploration in the western U.S., and there's great examples, household names like Midas, Sleeper, Aurora, Comstock, these sorts of systems that are all multi-million ounce epithermal vein deposits, all have some significant bonanza component, say over an ounce per ton. We think there's still a lot of potential to apply our current understanding of the epithermal model and look for opportunities where targets haven't been tested to the appropriate depth now that we understand the geology, and drill these things that may have been drilled by relatively shallow vertical RC drilling in the 80s in many cases, and test these things at the appropriate depths. And it seems to be working so far. Here's the portfolio of projects we've put together. As you see, the bulk of our projects are in Nevada, but we're also exploring this cluster of projects along the Oregon-Idaho border in what we view as an emerging epithermal belt. Delamar is the most probably well-known deposit up there, but there's a number of high upside opportunities in our view that we're working on. Katey, the first project I'll talk about, is one of these. This is about 50 kilometers to the northwest of Delamar. We have a relatively large land position, 5-6 kilometers in strike, a few kilometers wide, 2 large alteration cells. We only had time this year to drill 1 scout hole underneath each one of these alteration cells, and the first one, hole 1, encountered that high-grade feeder structure at depth underneath the west zone. This is what that looks like in cross-section. As you see, there's historic drilling down to about 100 meters, 150 meters that hit some low to moderate grades, But based on the geology alteration and everything that we're looking at, we expected to see a high-grade feeder somewhere in here and accurately predicted where it is and hit it. So now the next steps are fairly straightforward for us. We're going to be offsetting these sorts of intercepts in 30 to 60 meter increments, trying to grow size, obviously, and down dip and long strike, as well as test some other nice targets in the project area. Anytime you are able to demonstrate that an epithermal system like this is capable of producing these high grades, it's fairly significant, and it bodes well for projects. So we're looking to advance this property-wide as well. I'll march now down to western Nevada. This is our Spring Peak project, located immediately south of Hecla's Aurora mine complex. Aurora was a fantastic historic past producer that perhaps isn't as well known as it should be, but dating back to the early 1900s produced a couple million ounces of, much of it was over 2 ounces per ton. Fantastic high-grade production, especially in the early days from epithermal quartz veins. What we have to the south is a very similar geologic setting, but a fully preserved epithermal cell that has all of the things we look for to mark the very top of these systems. And we had targets and predicted that approximately 150 meters below the modern day surface is where the gold-bearing horizon should be. We drilled 5 holes into 4 different targets. 4 of the 5 holes encountered significant amounts of gold, all importantly below this 150 meter depth window where we get into the boiling zone. The best hole was beneath a barren, at surface barren sinter deposit. You can see the image here is a geophysical cross section through this target area, where it's very rare actually that your conceptual model and your actual geologic model in practice match almost 1-to-1. So we drilled this hole, and when we got to the target zone, yeah, we hit 38 meters of a gram underneath a blind sinter. With a higher grade component as well. So we need to get back in here with core, and this was our RC drilling program. We need to get back in here with core, identify exactly what's going on with these veins, and begin to offset them. But this is definitely a good proof of concept for us. So I'll just touch on one more project here. We have a large portfolio, but I'll only touch on one more. This is our Midas North project. We added this year. We're within the last 12 months anyway. It's north of the historic Midas mine, which was a fantastic past producer, about 4 million tons there mined at about 1 ounce per ton. This looks like a small land position that we control in the north, but if you look at the scale bar, it's still 5 or 6 kilometers long, a couple kilometers wide. And one of the more interesting things here is concurrently with our assembly of this land position in recon, Hecla was running an exploration program east of the historic Midas veins in this area that they call the Green Racer Sinter area, which resulted in a fairly significant new discovery. There's still not a lot of information out about that, but they've put out some highlights, including 189 grams of gold over an estimated true thickness of 4 meters. This looks like it's going to be something pretty interesting, and it is beneath a barren sinter, just like we're targeting elsewhere in the district. I think this opens up potential for additional discoveries in the district using this sort of playbook, following their alteration and geochemical targeting techniques. I'm a geologist, so I couldn't get through this presentation without putting a couple of sinter pictures in here. These are pretty actually fantastic examples from Midas North. The one on the lower left is a fossilized geyser vent. Think Old Faithful, Yosemite, only 15 million years ago on our land position. If you get as excited about this as I do, stop by the booth and we'll talk. But yeah, the next steps out here are pretty clear. We've got to do some early stage pre-drilling work to get the targets defined, and yeah, keep the ball rolling. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell here. I guess what we view as the value proposition is we're a quality team who's got quite a bit of experience on the technical side working in the Western U.S. We've got a great team on the ground there, a great corporate team, and we're going to keep marching through, doing our, executing our exploration program. And yeah, I think we offer a slightly de-risked portfolio now that we have 2 drill discoveries that don't appear to be priced in our view. And yeah, we're going to keep this going, 41% insider control. We're well positioned to, well aligned with our shareholders, and we'll do whatever it takes to make this thing a success.